Don't sign that merger, Miss Vale. She's alive. The pen froze mid-stroke. The thunderless hush of the Vale Tower boardroom turned brittle, glassy. Sloane Vale lifted her eyes, and the man with the mop at the far end of the table looked back at her like a ghost she'd loved and buried more than a decade ago. He didn't blink. The bucket at his side ticked as a drip fell, another. Somewhere over the skyline, lightning flickered behind the storm-dark clouds, reflecting in the floor-to-ceiling glass like a camera flash. Sloane heard her father's chair scrape back. "Security," Victor Vale said, voice cold enough to frost the windows. "Remove him, now." Two men in gray suits moved, flanking. Cassandra Rowe, Vale's general counsel, was already standing, tablet in hand, efficient as ever. "Miss Vale, this is a trespass. He's making a defamatory claim on a live internal feed." "Wait," Sloane said, though she didn't know yet what she was asking for. The syllable left her mouth, and memory smacked into the moment like an unlatched door in a windstorm. She knew that voice. She hadn't heard it since the fall she stopped believing in time. The janitor, no, Evan lifted his hand. A chain hung there, dull silver, ending in half a coin worn soft by the years. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Without thinking, Sloane's fingers went to the hollow of her throat. The edge of the coin she wore there bit lightly into her skin. It had been there every day of her adult life, a relic she hid, a promise to no one but the past. Bennett Morrow glanced at his watch, his smile tight and bored. "This is an important morning," he said, to no one and everyone. "Miss Vale, if we could handle housekeeping and proceed." "You can't sign," Evan said, low, steady. He looked thinner than she remembered, older around the eyes, but the jawline she'd traced with a finger in a dorm room cot was still the same. "Because the documents represent no heirs as true, they're not." Cassandra's mouth thinned. "Mr. Ray's, is it?" "You're inviting a criminal complaint." "That's his name?" Sloane asked, even though she knew. Her body had known before her mind did. Evan Ray's, the syllables tasted like a different life. "Let him speak," she said. "No," Victor snapped. "Sloane, you will not empower extortion." Her father's use of her first name felt like a hand around her neck. The boardroom waited, the city hummed, the cameras stared. Sloane drew a breath that wasn't quite steady. "I am the CEO of Vale Industries," she said, and the security guards froze as if their laces had been nailed to the floor. Evan didn't move. His gaze flicked to her father, to Cassandra, to Bennett, then back to her. The mop water gave off the sharp scent of lemon and bleach. The table gleamed with a version of reality Cassandra had curated, Arjun had weighed, Victor had demanded. Sloane had held that version together because that's what she did, hold, polish, keep. He opened his hand and the half coin swung. It matched the moon curve at the base of her throat, point for point. He had always known how to be quiet. In the silence, Sloane felt something unclench inside her chest. Her eyes burned. A murmur rippled around the table. Cameras whirred softly from the corners where the internal communications crew had set them to capture the celebratory signing. Any second now, she imagined Cassandra calculating breach, penalty, reputational risk. Arjun Patel, her CFO, cleared his throat. His eyes had gone from warm to flat. "Speaking as an officer of the company, we are now on notice of a potentially material misrepresentation," he said, eyes on Cassandra. "I recommend we recess immediately." Victor stood, anger a live wire under his skin. "Sit down, Arjun." "Mr. Ray's," Sloane said, barely above a whisper. "What did you say?" She wanted him to say it again, to make the words real. At the edge of her vision, the city blurred. "Don't sign," he said. "She's alive." Her world sharpened. Not the board, not the thunder, not Victor's fury, just that sentence which snapped some frozen gate in her, releasing a flood. 11 years ago, a clinic with no windows and hands that held her down. Paperwork with her father's assistant's initials. The analgesia fog that never quite took. When it was over, was it over? A man in a white coat saying non-viable, "I'm sorry," then a pen pressed into her hand, signatures, hush. She had not asked questions. To ask was to betray the role, to betray the plan, the company, the future. To ask meant losing everything twice. Now Evans stood under their lights, in his janitor's polo shirt with a name tag that made a mockery of how much he'd once been to her, holding the proof of her life she had given herself permission to forget. Hours earlier, the day had smelled like coffee and rain. "Up, star," Evan had murmured, leaning over the rumpled heap that was his daughter. Maya's room was a constellation of paper cranes, their shadows tilting on invisible drafts. "We'll miss the bus, and Miss Dwyer will run extra laps as revenge." I like laps, Maya said into her pillow. It's the push-ups that are fascist. Evan laughed softly. He sat on the edge of her bed and gently pressed his knuckles to her shoulder. Sandwich or pasta? Both, she said, flipping over with a grin that made the morning brighter every morning. The locket at her neck flashed. He knew it like he knew the lines on his palms, the half coin he'd told her belonged to her story. He hadn't told her how. He packed lunch. He set out her rain boots. He watched her test a paper crane's glide and thought, as he had every day for years, that he would tell her soon. He would build the ground first. Dad, Maya said, lacing her boots. His mom, was she nice? She was, Evan said. The truth was small, a shape he could hold without dropping. She was brave. She loved engineering. She could take apart a small appliance and put it back together without looking. Like you, Maya said. He smiled. I learned it from her. After the bus gulped her up, he stood in the rain and watched it go. He felt the old compass inside him settle in a direction he had never stopped pretending was a dream. Vale Tower was in the middle distance, the glass catching the weather like a mood ring. In his kitchen drawer, the letter he had written 11 years ago waited, the ink faded just enough to look like it came from a different Evan. I will find you, it began. If I ever find her first, I will bring her to you without bitterness, without begging. We will be older then, and it will be harder, but we will tell the truth. He tucked the letter into his pocket. He had heard about the merger on the radio, the sum said with a smile by a man who would never have to mop a floor. 10 billion. No heirs, clean cap table, the business shows recited. Clean, the word lodged like a nail. At Vale Tower, the night manager had assigned him the 12th floor for morning polish. Big day upstairs, Rays, he'd said, half conspiratorial. Don't leave streaks. Wouldn't dream of it, Evan had replied. He had spent so long walking on tile that showed everything that he sometimes forgot how to put his feet down on anything else. He'd passed Sloane's portrait in the executive hall. The painter had caught her power, her chin at a slight angle that dared the world to dodge. He'd paused, the mop handle knocking lightly against his thigh. He had not let himself think. Sloane, at 7 a.m., had stood at the window of her office and watched the storm build like a negotiation tactic. Arjun knocked and came in with his calm, practical face. Your last draft for remarks, he said, tapping his tablet. And a reminder that Morrow Klein asked that you remove references to expanding our employee equity pool this quarter. Sloane's jaw worked. They're allergic to humanity. They're allergic to deltas in forecasted EPS, Arjun said, and she let out a not quite laugh. He added, Victor will push you to acquiesce. Remember, you can stare longer than anyone in that room. She touched the chain at her throat, a habit like prayer. Do you ever get tired of being right, Arjun? Constantly, he said, and left her with her reflection in the glass, the woman she had taught herself to be looking back with approval and suspicion. She loosened the clasp of the locket and felt the cool weight of it in her palm. The spine of memory she'd trained herself not to touch pricked her, and she snapped it shut before the door opened again. Cassandra glided in. One small matter, Sloane, she said crisply. The Morrow Klein side has added a standard rep to the certificate of closing. No heirs, no living issue that could contest control. Normal for a private equity roll-up of this magnitude, you'll sign it as a matter of course. While I understand the optics, your personal life is not at issue. Sloane's mouth felt dry. It's not a template I've used, she said carefully. It is now, Cassandra said, with a pleasant smile that failed to reach her eyes. I'll have a pen waiting. Victor arrived a moment later, a storm in an expensive suit. Don't antagonize them, he said by way of greeting. We finish this today, we control our runway for 10 years. Yes, Sloane said, thinking, control. Back in the boardroom, the glare was a surgical knife. Evan stood at the head of the table now because Sloane had stepped back and made room for him, because she had said let him speak, and nobody had dared contradict the tone that came out of her mouth. It had been the voice she used when she knew she was about to lose something and decided she would rather choose it than pretend. Mr. Rays. Cassandra's voice cut. You're alleging a child exists who would render a representation of this merger false. That is a serious claim. Do you have any actual? Evan took a single folded sheet from the pocket of his janitor's polo. He smoothed it out and placed it at the edge of the table, at a respectful distance from the ceremonial fountain pen. A child's drawing, a woman with a coin at her throat and eyes the color of stormwater. The other half of the coin in the center, drawn with such care the graphite looked like it might shine. My daughter drew that, he said, not looking away from Sloane. She wears this, he lifted the chain again, because when she was 2, she found it in the box I kept by my bed and wouldn't let go. I told her it belongs to her mother. Sloane's hand trembled. Without quite meaning to, she pulled the edge of her blouse aside, just enough for the camera for the board, for him to see the matching half. Gasps peeled around the room like paper tearing. She felt exposed and relieved, like opening a window in a room that smelled like secrets. Coincidences happen, Cassandra said evenly, but the evenness had a tremor. We cannot allow this, enough, Sloane said. The word carried 10 years of swallowed yeses. She turned to the head of the table where the pen gleamed, a ceremonial weapon. The transaction summary lay open, the signatures page crisp and waiting. The cameras watched. Bennett sighed, already texting. Sloane walked to the table and lifted the pen. It felt heavy, important, everything she had ever been told mattered. She set it down. She picked up the documents with both hands, and the room realized at the same moment what she intended to do. She tore the stack down the middle. Paper screamed. The room didn't so much gasp as go silent in a way that felt like sound. The two halves hung, then fell to either side of the table like slain flags. Victor swore. Cassandra's eyes widened, then flattened into calculation. Bennett's jaw unhinged with a comic frown. Arjun's hands relaxed, and something like pride flickered across his face before he schooled it. Sloane's voice was steady now. There will be no signing today, she said. We will recess immediately. Effective now, I'm suspending the closing pending an internal review into all representations, including the no heirs provision. She looked at Evan, Mr. Reyes, she almost called him, then didn't. Evan. He blinked at the sound of his name in her mouth. He looked like a man who had been standing on ice and finally heard it crack. Victor was already spitting. You don't have the authority to. I do, Sloane said, not looking at him. Security, stand down. Mr. Reyes will remain. Everyone else, give us 10 minutes. Mr. Morrow, Mr. Patel, Miss Rowe, and Chairman Vale may stay. Bennett stood, fussing with his cufflinks. Miss Vale, this is an extraordinary breach of protocol and… What did you expect? Sloane said, and the unfamiliar lightness of saying exactly what she meant made her feel almost giddy. That we would proceed while on notice of a potential fraud. If you want a partner who will sign blind, you're in the wrong room. Arjun angled toward Cassandra, voice low. We need to secure the cameras, legal hold across all internal feeds. Cassandra nodded, recovered. Already done. But Sloane, the penalties for delay are less catastrophic than the cost of lying, Sloane said. She turned to Evan. Where is she? At school, he said, and his voice broke over the word like a man hitting surf after drowning. Maya, she's 10, she has science on Mondays. Sloane realized she was crying and didn't wipe the tears. They carved honest paths along her face. She drew in a breath that hurt and steadied herself on the back of a leather chair. If there is a child, she said, so the board would hear, so Arjun's minutes would show she hadn't conceded truth without proof. I was told, she paused because the word tasted like rot. I was told she didn't survive. Evans swallowed hard. She did. I found her 2 days after she was born, no name on a plastic cradle, just a bracelet number. I followed the paper until the trail turned into a wall. I hit that wall to dust until I could hold her. I have proof, files, names. Bennett made a dismissive noise. He's a janitor, he said, as though that explained reality. This is theater. Careful, Arjun said, too soft to be performative. You're on record. Victor leaned forward, voice low, venomous. Do you know what you've done, Sloane? You've broken an obligation to thousands of people. For what? An old, for the truth, she said, turning on him with a fury she had saved for no one, not even herself. I will not build an empire on a lie. The words hung in the air, shifting shape as they settled, becoming policy. For the first time that morning, Sloane noticed her own breathing. She looked at Arjun. Call a special board session for this evening. Secure the archives. I want a forensic audit on any historical legal arrangements concerning me or the family, signed by Cassandra or otherwise. Nothing leaves this building. If anyone obstructs you, tell me. Arjun nodded, already making lists in the air. Understood. Cassandra lifted her chin. Sloane, that could be construed as an accusation. It is, Sloane said quietly, of whoever deserves it. Bennett gathered his papers with the kind of care that meant calculation. If you don't sign by close of business, he said, Morrow Klein will withdraw. We will exercise every available remedy. We'll see you this evening, Sloane said, or we won't. She turned to Evan. Will you bring Maya here later, to somewhere private? She hesitated, not just because she was in public, but because there are words that once spoken change the shape of the floor. If you're willing, Evan nodded, color draining and returning to his face in waves. Yes, after school, she'll want to know. Sloane exhaled a laugh that wasn't a laugh. So will I. The room emptied like a tide pulling back from a strange, sharp coastline. Directors left in clusters, whispering. Bennett walked out with a smile that didn't have a mouth in it. Cassandra stood very still, the way snakes do before they strike. Victor stayed seated, hands on the table, a man who had taught a girl to never lose her grip, watching her let go. Sloane looked down at the torn papers. The ink of her name was half a signature now, a fragment like the coin at her throat. She picked up one half of the document and then set it down again. The torn edge felt honest under her fingers. We're not done, Victor said in a voice made of decades. I won't let you throw away. It was never yours to throw, Sloane said. She reached for her heel where the strap had cut into her skin, slipped it off, then the other. Barefoot, she felt the cool floor, the slight grit you can only find on glass if you go looking. She walked to Evan. Up close, he smelled like rain and cleaning fluid and a memory of autumn. He stood very straight. You should have been an engineer, she said, something impossible flipping over in her chest. You should have been free, he said. They stood there, two people with a decade between them and a $10 billion decision torn in half at their backs, and for a single heartbeat Sloane saw all there could have been lives at once, shimmering like a mirage. Arjun stepped in with a gentleness that surprised her. I'll set the session for 6 o'clock, he said. I'll start the holds, and Sloane, he paused until she met his eyes. You're doing the right thing. Right isn't cheap, Victor said. No, Sloane said, but it lasts. She picked up the child's drawing and smoothed its crease gently, as if smoothing a child's hair. The graphite coin in the middle seemed to shine even though it was dull. We'll meet in my lounge, she said to Evan. At 4, we'll talk, bring what you have. I will, he said, voice low. Sloane turned and walked with him toward the doors. The security guards looked at him at the floor. She nodded to them. They moved aside. As she and Evan passed her father, Victor's stare hooked into her sleeve like a snag. She didn't look at him. She pushed the boardroom doors open with both hands and stepped into the hallway, where the air smelled less like money and more like rain. Behind them, the cameras blinked red and then stopped, the light going flat. On the long table, the torn contract has made a neat horizon, and on the glossy glass, the arcs of Evan's mop had left faint tracks that caught the light like ripples in a quiet lake. Sloane let the doors swing shut. The hallway was empty. She felt the weight of the locket against her sternum and the new shape of the day forming around it. We'll need security, Arjun's voice called from somewhere behind them, already planning. We'll need control of the archives. We'll need the truth, Sloane said without turning around. It would cost, it would hurt. It would take the rest of the day and the rest of her life. But for the first time in 11 years, the future didn't feel like a script she'd been handed. It felt like a room she was walking into on her own feet. 4 o'clock, she said to Evan, and he nodded, and they kept moving down the hall together toward a door marked private where the next thing waited. The storm outside cracked open, and the city took a breath. By 4 o'clock, the storm had pushed to the river, leaving the city rinsed and alert. Sloane's private lounge glowed with low lamps and the muted hum of the air purifier. The room had always been a refuge, all cream leather and dark walnut, but now it felt like a witness stand. Arjun stood by the door, sleeves rolled once, eyes on the tablet he cradled like a shield. He'd placed a slim jammer on the credenza, legal or not, Sloane didn't ask. She'd taken her shoes off again, grounding herself on the cool floor. Evan sat on the edge of the sofa as if it might eject him. He'd showered, changed into a clean shirt, and still carried the smell of rain and citrus soap. In his lap lay a worn manila folder, edges softened by a decade of being opened and closed by careful hands. He looked up when Sloane came in, and they both halted a step in the doorway. The room seemed to narrow, and then it didn't. Thank you for staying, she said. Her voice didn't tremble this time. The tremor had moved lower to the bones. Thank you for stopping, he said. There are days I thought I'd die with this in a drawer. Arjun leaned to Sloane, quiet. We're clean in here, no feeds. He glanced at Evan. Mr. Reyes, I'm Arjun Patel. I'm sorry we're meeting like this. Evan nodded, awkward and grateful. Likewise. Sloane crossed to the safe in the corner, an old thing mechanical, with a dial you had to believe in. Her fingers spun it from memory. Inside lay a handful of memories she'd denied herself. A dorm room photo, two bodies under one flannel blanket, laughing, her half of the coin locket resting on top of it, documents in thick envelopes. She took the locket and the photo and placed them on the table. The picture felt hot in her hand. The coin felt like it had been waiting. I told myself I kept these to remember who not to be, she said. That was a lie. I kept them so I wouldn't forget who I was before my father taught me a different language. Evan's mouth worked. You still speak ours, he said. The way you tore the paper felt like breathing, she finished. For the first time in 11 years. He slid the manila folder across the coffee table and opened it. Inside, a photo of a hospital bracelet, its plastic cloudy with age. The number was printed in blocky black, NL041913. An intake form stamped County General Infant Female found. Immunization records. Pediatric charts with a name printed in neat caps, Maya Ray's. April 19th, Sloane said, the date leaving her mouth like a prayer she hadn't dared say aloud. Your bracelet number, she added to him, and then stopped, because her mind was sprinting back to that year, to the clinic with no windows and the forms and the voice that said non-viable, I'm sorry, and she hadn't asked for proof because asking was dangerous. Maya was in a plastic bassinet with a number stuck to it, Evan said. No name, no mother's details. The nurse said she wasn't allowed to tell me anything, but she cried when she handed me the bottle. 2 days, he said, swallowing. She waited 2 days for someone to claim her. He stopped, jaw clenched. You were 25, Sloane said softly. I left you with nothing but grief and a ghost. You didn't leave me, he said, sharper than he'd intended. You were taken, I know that now. Sloane pressed her fingers to her locket, the chain imprinting into her skin. My father sent me to Brightleaf Wellness, she said. He called it a retreat. He said it was necessary, that we couldn't jeopardize the succession, the company, us. Cassandra handled the paperwork. When it was over, they told me there was nothing left to save. I signed what they put in front of me. I didn't ask for charts. I didn't ask for a bracelet. I asked my father if he was sure. She looked at Evan, willing herself not to break. He said it was a blessing. Arjun was very still, eyes moving as if reading lines only he could see. Brightleaf, he said. I've seen that name. Evan took a breath, let it out. A year ago, when Maya asked me if her mother was nice, I started looking harder. I'm good with patterns. I found payments from a shell company, Caravel Partners, moving to a clinic called Brightleaf Wellness, labeled as Executive Health Programs. The dates aligned with April of that year. I couldn't get inside the records, but every time I hit a wall, the wall's bricks had the same mortar. A firm called Grafton Pike handled the shells. Another diagram, their general counsel correspondence, kept looping to Vale's email servers. He glanced at Arjun, apologetic. I don't know how to move around corporate walls, but someone at County General still remembered me. She got me the bracelet's original intake image, NL041913. When I saw the number, something in me, I knew it meant something. It sat in my drawer until this morning. Sloane closed her eyes. April 19th, she said again, because saying it didn't change it, but it made the ground under her stop feeling like it was tilting. She opened her eyes. I need proof Sloane the CEO understands, not Sloane the daughter. Arjun set his tablet on the table and swiped. I ran a high-level scan when we first started discussing Morrow Klein, he said to both of them. Not because I knew, but because my gut didn't like the no heirs clause. In a restricted ledger, under chairman's discretionary accounts, I found line items tagged Executive Wellness Brightleaf, 11 years ago. The disbursement authorizations were countersigned by Cassandra Rowe. He slid a PDF across the screen, a ledger with neat lines and one small name that now looked monstrous. Sloane stared at it, at Cassandra's electronic initials, C. Rowe spliced with Victor's code. Rage came on like fever. Show me the memo, she said. Arjun opened another file. Legal memo, subject, representations of no living issue prepared for S. Vale. Red lines in precise legalese traced a clause like a noose. At the top corner, a note from an outside counsel. Morrow Klein requests CFO certification of no living heirs with potential future claim on control. Standard language for roll-up. The comment bubble was initialed B. Morrow/G. Pike Counsel. Sloane's mouth tasted like pennies. They asked me to sign a lie, she said, and my father ensured it would be one. Her gaze cut to the safe. There's something else. She returned with an envelope she'd never opened. It bore the clinic's name in sanguine script, Brightleaf Wellness, and her own in block letters, impersonal as a receipt. Inside, a black and white ultrasound image, the grainy archipelago of a life. Sloane's fingers tightened. They let me keep the picture, she whispered, but not the child. Evan reached across the table and stopped, his hand hovering as if the air had turned to glass between them. She has your eyes, he said softly. Sloane's breath hitched. I wouldn't know, she said, and that was when her shoulders finally shook just once and steadied. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand, smearing the careful polish of the day. We need to show the board, she said. Not the ultrasound, they'll call it sentimental. The ledger, the memo, the bracelet number. And she looked at Arjun. You said you'd seen something else. Arjun hesitated. I set an automatic archive on voicemails to legal after a compliance scare 2 years ago. Victor left Cassandra a message the night before you were sent to Brightleaf. I didn't delete it. He pressed play. Victor's voice came tinny and precise through the speaker. Do it clean, Cass, no paper trail. We can't afford loose ends, make the problem go away. Silence pressed around them like a palm. Evan swallowed. He called his granddaughter a problem. He called me one first, Sloane said. I tried to be a solution for 11 years. She looked at Arjun. I'm going to end the merger. Bennett will threaten, my father will try to remove me. Arjun set his jaw. He can try, you have cause, we have evidence, we're not the board he thinks we are. They didn't know then that on the other side of the floor, Victor and Cassandra were already planning their counterattack. He's a janitor, Cassandra said, voice crisp as a new bill. We leak a past due notice, we suggest gambling, a medical debt. We seed a story of extortion. Victor paced, voice tight with fury. If she thinks I will let everything be destroyed because she wants to play mother at 34, then you don't know your daughter, Bennett Morrow drawled from the couch, where he had made himself comfortable as if this were an impromptu salon rather than the last stand of a dynasty. Or perhaps you do, and that's the problem. She's you with better PR, Victor stopped. We need the merger. You need it more than I do, Bennett said, smoothing a non-existent wrinkle from his cuff. But here's a path. Sloane resigns gracefully on grounds of emotional compromise. You assume interim CEO. We proceed. Morrow Klein underwrites the litigation risk and takes the heat. We can even spin it. Tragic family matter, brave leadership. We're seasoned with scandal, Victor. We know how to salt the meat. Cassandra looked at him, something like admiration in the tilt of her head. It could work, she said. If she's alone. She isn't, Victor snapped. She has that CFO idiot breathing conscience into her ear. Remove him. On what grounds? Cassandra asked. He has not erred. Victor's mouth curled. We'll make some. At 6 o'clock, the boardroom had the particular shine of evening, shadows lengthening, lights coming up, the city beginning its second shift. The directors filed in with their armor polished, neutral faces, legal pads at the ready. Bennett took his seat and arranged his spectacles in a way that made him look avuncular. Victor at the head, like a man who had never considered losing his chair. Cassandra with her tablet, calm as a blade. Sloane entered with Arjun and set a folder on the table the way a surgeon sets a tray. Evan stood along the back wall, hands clasped in front of him, a man who did not belong and would always belong because the truth belonged to him. Victor started. I call this emergency session to order. Due to today's unfortunate disruption, we must address Miss Vale's fitness to lead. Cassandra cleared her throat. Our fiduciary duty requires us to act in the interest of shareholders. Delaying the merger may result in catastrophic penalties and reputational damage. Agreed, Bennett said. Miss Vale's emotional state is understandable, but business cannot stop for private grief. Sloane put her hands flat on the table. This is not private grief, she said. This is fraud. She nodded to Arjun, who slid the tablet to the center screen, where the ledger popped into sterile light. 11 years ago, Brightleaf Wellness received payments authorized by Chairman Vale and General Counsel Rowe. On the night before I was sent there, Chairman Vale told Miss Rowe to make the problem go away. We have his voicemail. She gestured, and Arjun pressed play. Victor went paler, an achievement for a man already made of marble. A director down the table adjusted his glasses. Good Lord, he said, though it's unclear whether he meant God or the lawsuit. Sloane didn't flinch. Brightleaf did not provide me with documentation. I was told my child was not viable. 2 days later, a healthy infant with a matching hospital bracelet was found at County General and became Maya Ray's. The no heirs representation demanded by Morrow Klein is therefore materially false. If we sign in deceit. Cassandra lifted a hand. We do not know that the bracelet correlates. Photographs can be fabricated, clinics outsource intern. Stop, Sloane said. Look at me, Cassandra. Look at me and say you didn't know. Cassandra's mouth opened, closed. Sloane turned to the board. Morrow Klein's counsel insisted on a certificate of no living issue. Their email is in our files. They asked me to sign their lie. She looked at Bennett. Tell the board this is standard. Bennett's smile did not slip. We ensure clean governance. We do not force anyone to. You insisted, Arjun cut in. Your initials are on the comment. We have the metadata. Silence landed like a gavel. Sloane lifted the two halves of the coin from the table. She held hers up, then Evans, he had handed it to her quietly before they entered, and let the room see the match. I don't need this to prove fiduciary breach, she said, and her voice was iron underneath glass, but I need it to tell you why I'm about to do what I'm about to do. She set the coins down. I move to suspend Victor Vale as chair pending an independent investigation into misconduct. I move to terminate Cassandra Rowe for cause, effective immediately. I move to cancel the merger with Morrow Klein Capital on grounds of ethical breach and material misrepresentation risk. And I commit 10% of my personal holdings to a trust for employee families and at-risk children, beginning with a grant named for April 19th, the day my daughter was born. It will operate independently. It will never answer to this board. The room inhaled. Something like awe or fear or both passed down the table like a rumor. Victor barked a laugh. Over my dead, seconded, Arjun said, and his voice was not calm now, it had steel in it. Call the vote. Outrageous, Cassandra hissed, but her eyes were no longer flat. They were alive with a panic she hadn't planned for. One by one, the board voted. A few eyes slid to the doors, calculating the press outside. Some cleared their throats. A couple whispered. The tally landed close enough to sting, suspend Victor, yes, terminate Cassandra, yes, cancel the merger, yes. Bennett stood, gentleman's polite. You will regret this, he said. Markets do not forgive sentimentality. Markets also don't like the Department of Justice, Arjun murmured. Security, Sloane said, and two guards stepped forward, not for Evan, not today, but for Cassandra. You are terminated for cause. You will surrender your devices. Cassandra's composure shattered. You're making a mistake, she snapped, clutching her tablet as if it could rewrite the past. I served this company, with your eyes closed, Sloane said, and your hands out. The guards escorted Cassandra out, her heels biting fury into the carpet. Victor remained seated, something broken and livid flickering across his face. Sloane, he said, using the tone he had used when she was 12 and had scraped his car with her bicycle. Think. I am thinking, she said. For once, not with your voice. She looked to the directors. An independent investigation will begin tomorrow. Arjun, as interim chair, you'll oversee it. We will cooperate fully. We will speak to the press now, and we will tell them the truth. For a second, Victor looked like a man seeing a winter he had believed himself immune to. He said nothing. Outside, the press area had bloomed with microphones like a field of metallic flowers. Sloane stepped up, Evan and Arjun a half step back. Flashbulbs popped, thunderless. I was lied to, she said, and somewhere in the crowd, a collective breath released, the unmistakable sound of a headline warming its hands. My child lived. I didn't know. We will not proceed with any deal predicated on a falsehood. We will cooperate with authorities. We will take care of our employees. And I will take care of my family. That is all. Questions flew, bright and hungry. She lifted a hand, declined them, and turned away. By 8, the city had put its lamps on. Evan's apartment was 3 flights up in a building that held heat too well in summer and not well enough in winter. The hallway smelled like curry and paint thinner. Inside, the light was warm and human, a small universe made of paper cranes and homework sheets, and a potted basil plant struggling near the window. Maya sat at the kitchen table, her backpack dropped like a shield. Her hair was damp from the shower, combed straight as a new road. She looked at Sloane and then at Evan, orderly and brave. Hi, Sloane said, and the word felt like the first step on a bridge she was terrified to cross but had to. I'm Sloane. Maya's eyes flicked to the coin at Sloane's throat and then to the one she wore. She lifted hers with 2 fingers and let it swing. Dad said you had the other piece, she said. He said you're my mom. Sloane held onto the back of a chair until the room stopped tilting. I am, she said. If you'll have me. Maya studied her. Did you leave because you didn't want me? The floor went out. Sloane knelt so they were eye level, and for a second she was just a woman with her palms open. I didn't know you were alive, she said. I was told I lost you. I should have fought harder. I should have found you sooner. I'm so sorry. Maya looked at Evan. He nodded, his face soft and terrified. She didn't know, he said, and she stopped something very big today to tell the truth. Maya nodded slowly. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a paper star, meticulously folded, the points perfect. I made this in art, she said. She held it out. You can have it if you want. Sloane's throat closed. She took the star like it was a relic. I want, she said. I want to know everything if you want to tell me. They sat. They didn't pretend it wasn't strange. They didn't pretend 10 years could be folded like paper. Maya told Sloane about Miss Dwyer and how she said the mitochondria was the powerhouse of the cell like it was a joke. She told her about the kid who stole her pencil and then put it back. She told her about her favorite YouTube channel where a woman built bridges out of popsicle sticks and tested them with dumbbells. Sloane listened like it was a job she'd always wanted and never knew existed. When Maya went to brush her teeth, Sloane and Evan stood on the fire escape, the city's breath rising around them. The metal grating pressed patterns into their feet. Down below, a siren Dopplered past. Somewhere, a couple laughed too loud. Somewhere else, a dog barked like it was telling the future to behave. She's extraordinary, Sloane said. It came out half wonder, half apology. She is, Evan said. She made me extraordinary enough to keep up. They were quiet a moment. The air was clean with the afterstorm. In the building across the alley, a woman watered a philodendron with theatrical care. Sloane laughed softly, unexpected. I don't know what to do next, she said. I know how to run a crisis and a $10 billion enterprise. I don't know how to ask a 10-year-old if she likes peas. You'll learn, Evan said. Slowly, with permission, she nodded. I won't take her away from you. His shoulders dropped. He hadn't known how much he'd been bracing. I won't shut you out, he said. We'll write the rules. We won't sign the ones handed to us. They looked at each other then, for longer than they had any right to, two people on the far side of war. There was still love there. It was not the dorm room wildfire. It was something steadier, a banked flame that could warm a room if you set it right. Do you hate me? Sloane asked, because she owed him an answer even if she couldn't survive it. I hate what was done to us, he said. And I love our daughter, and he stopped, the word bankrupt for a moment. I don't know what I am to you now. Honest, she said, and that's worth more than anything in my world. Inside, Maya patted back, dragging her blanket like a comet tail. Dad says you can read, she said to Sloane with the seriousness of a judge. Will you read? I'd be honored, Sloane said. She took the offered paperback about a girl who built a bridge when the adults couldn't and read until Maya's eyelids fluttered and settled. The sound of Maya's breathing filled the little room like a promise. When Maya slept, Sloane stood and watched her for a long time. She reached up and unclasped her locket, her half-coin warm from her skin. She looked at Evan. He nodded. Gently, Sloane bent and held her coin near Maya's. May I? She whispered. Maya, eyes closed, nodded in that half-dream way children have when safety touches them. Sloane clicked the halves together. The coin made the smallest sound, a sound no microphone could have caught but the room seemed to hear, not a click exactly. A yes. The coin held. Sloane kissed Maya's forehead and stood back. She felt different in her bones, a recalibration. She turned to Evan. Tomorrow will be worse, she said, matter of fact. There will be calls and subpoenas. Your face will be on things. We'll be accused of everything. I'll need your permission to protect you without using you. You can protect us, he said, but we don't go behind each other's backs again. Not for a deal, not for press, not for my pride. Agreed, she said. I have a board to teach a new language. He smiled, tired and true. Good luck with that. She smiled back. Thank you for raising her, she said. Thank you for not giving up on me. I tried, he admitted. It didn't take. When she left, the hallway felt like a new country. On the fire escape, she paused and looked at the rectangle of apartment light, the paper cranes casting small companions along the wall. She had never been so rich in her life. Back at Vale Tower, the boardroom smelled faintly of toner and lemon oil. The torn merger papers still claimed their horizon. A new agenda lay at each leather chair, Arjun's print, meticulous. Item 1, Independent Investigation Charter. Item 2, Employee Family Trust Formation. Item 3, Governance Reforms. The kind of list that made empires earnest again. Victor sat alone at the table, a shadow cut from his own silhouette. The building around him hummed with the life he had made and tried to keep exact. He stared at the torn pages and saw not paper, but the edge of a world he could not propel back into shape with force of will alone. In a different office, Cassandra stared at her reflection in a dark computer monitor, her badge surrendered, her inbox gone. A lifetime of sharpness had lengthened into a corridor with no doors. She would hire counsel, of course. She would tell herself she'd been doing what the world required. Karma is not a courtroom, but sometimes it borrows one for the spectacle. At home, Sloane stood at her window and watched the river turn black and silver under the night. Her phone chimed and chimed. She let it. She opened her safe and took out the ultrasound again, then put it back, then took it out, unable to decide if it belonged with the locket or with the documents she was going to show a prosecutor. Maybe it belonged in her wallet next to the photo she had just taken, Meyer asleep under a paper sky. She opened a new note and typed April 19th. Trust, ethics first, family not afterthought. She deleted the last line and wrote it again, family first, not afterthought. She closed her eyes and saw the coin click, felt the clean shock of paper tearing, heard the tinny villainy of her father's voice on an old voicemail. The past, the ledger, the future opening its door. On the fire escape across town, Evan sat under the weight of a day that had rewritten him and watched the night take the city. He could see their reflections superimposed on the glass, his, older, tired Maya's, small and steady Sloane's, new in the doorway next to them like she had never left, like she had finally found the right door. 3 silhouettes breathed the same evening air. Somewhere below, a taxi horn insisted. Above, a plane stitched a quiet seam between clouds. The world, unshocked by its own violence, kept moving. Inside that motion, a thing that mattered had at last stopped lying. Wealth, Sloane thought as she turned from her window, is what you build that doesn't need you to pretend. Love is what you protect even when it costs everything. And family is what returns when you open the door and stand aside.